Welcome back to Over the Middle, the best recruiting podcast around. I'm your host, Jeremy Crabtree, and I'm the senior recruiting editor for On3. We're brought to you by the amazing folks at YourView, the home for the best live high school football coverage from coast to coast. If it's a top matchup in Oklahoma, YourView has you covered. It's the same thing in Arizona, Louisiana, Kansas, and other corners of the country. Be sure to log on to watch.yourview.com. Once there, you can subscribe to access for all the games across the country, or you can pick a single game matchup that jumps out to you for just $7.99. And I'll tell you what, the high school football playoffs are here all over the country, and YourView has you covered with top games in Kansas, Nebraska, Louisiana, Arizona, and again, all over the country. To check out the full lineup of the games, be sure to log on to watch.yourview.com or tune into your local YourView station at 7 p.m. for, in Oklahoma, the Ford game of the week, and game time coverage throughout other parts of the country. All right. Well, let's dive into this week's topic. And for those of you that are new to Over the Middle, or even our old-time listeners here, you know we like to dive deep into topics that evolve on the recruiting trail and kind of avoid talking about this kid going to that school or this school lining up every kid for an official visit. But one of the most evident and emerging trends, okay, it's not emerging anymore, it's here, are the Georgia Bulldogs domination on the field and also on the recruiting trail. So to us old timers that cover recruiting, there's an old quote that we hear all the time. It's not about the X's and O's, it's about the Jimmies and Joes. That's been attributed to a number of people over the years. Darrell Royal, Barry Switzer, Jimmy Johnson. Those are just a few of the names that have been tabbed with that quote. And we've got a modern version of it last week when Georgia coach Kirby Smart was asked after the Dogs' domination over Ralphville, Florida, why his defense is so good. He responded with a quote that has reverberated across the recruiting trail. He said, quote, "If you don't recruit, there is no coach out there that can outcoach recruiting." He responded with a quote that has reverberated across the recruiting trail. Coach Smart said, "If you don't recruit, there is no coach out there that can outcoach recruiting. I don't care who you are. The best coach to ever play the game better be a good recruiter because no coaching is going to outcoach players. Anybody will tell you that our defense is good because we have very good players." Smart very clearly understands that assignment. Georgia's recruiting classes under him have ranked 6th, 3rd, 1st, 2nd, 1st, and 4th. And his current recruiting class is ranked number 2 in the On3 consensus team ranking. And to talk about, there's been some reaction to that quote and about what Kirby Smart has done so far on the 2022 recruiting class. I'm excited to be joined by Jake Reuse of Dawgs HQ, the number one Georgia-focused fan site that's a part of the On3 network. Jake, welcome into Over the Middle.
Hey, Jeremy, thanks for having me, man. It's you speaking of old timers, man. I've been following you since I was in diapers, so it's an honor. It's an honor for me to be on here with you, buddy.
Well, I got some gray hair in my beard. So yeah. I feel that. Yeah, doing this thing for 25 plus years now, and you do a tremendous job there covering Georgia. And this quote really kind of struck a nerve with a lot of people. And I honestly, I don't know why it's such a big deal, especially to us that follow recruiting like we do. But it did strike a nerve. I know some folks kind of took it that coaching doesn't matter, but I don't think that's the case at all, right?
Oh, no, not at all. I don't think that was Kirby's implication in the least. I think that he's been pretty clear, through the hires he's made, through the decisions he makes in games as well, that coaching is every bit as important. And realistically, if you don't have that development, you're not going to be landing these top kids anyway. So he clearly understands the importance of recruiting. But like you said, I don't view this as a situation where he's saying, coaching is not a key component of it. That has to be a part of it as well.
Yeah, and let's be honest. Good coaches become great coaches when they have better players. You can execute a game plan better when you have better players that are bigger, stronger, faster, and with a better football IQ. And that's what you get when you have success on the recruiting trail.
Yeah, well, and Georgia's proof positive, right? I mean, Alabama as well. Look around the top teams in college football and you see the recruiting rankings. I know people, like to say stars don't matter, but you look around, hey, the guys with the players are the guys on top of the heap. That just is how it is year in, year out. So, I caution people anytime they say stars don't matter, there's definitely an element of it for sure.
Yeah, and I live in Kansas City. We watched Bill Snyder recruit at K-State, and they hit the kind of tip of the iceberg with overachieving. We're seeing it a little bit at Matt Campbell at Iowa State, but let's be honest, when it comes down to playing in the college football playoff and winning national championships and doing all those types of high-level things, you can win conference championships at some conferences, but you can't win the big games without the good players.
Yeah, and certainly not in the SEC. I mean, like you said, you can get it done maybe in some conferences. And perhaps you could win the MAC if you needed to with great coaching and some good 3-stars. But you better have your 5-star guns ready to go if you're in the SEC, because it matters year in and year out. Mm-hmm. We're seeing some of the biggest battles of the year always come through this conference, and Georgia squarely in the middle of many of them.
So let's look at why Kirby has been so successful over the years since he took over. We could talk about at length. I mean, Georgia is one of those unique schools that has recruiting advantages that no one else has. They've got great high school football in its own backyard. I think you can look at the numbers and you can see that Georgia has kind of supplanted Florida as one of the big 3 states that produce talent, along with Texas and California. The growing population base, especially in that Atlanta metro area, rabid. I mean, and you know better than I do, Jake, about the rabid fan base that supports the program. Great facility, some of the best in the country, quality academics, and then you got a very Texas-like feeling where kids in Georgia growing up, they idolize UGA and they want to play there. But Jake, a lot of those things were there under previous coaches, yet we've not seen this type of success on the field and on the recruiting trail in the decade. So you've been covering this for a while now. Is there a secret to Kirby's success? Why have they been so successful on the trail?
I don't think it's a secret at all. I think it's just the Nick Sabin model. You better always be recruiting, and you better always be investing in your program.
Yeah.
I think that that's another thing. Kirby came into this, I think, probably with some of the same thoughts that you did about, these things have been in place.
Mm-hmm.
They've been there for other coaches. Why haven't other people been able to capitalize on it? It may have been a lack of devotion, I think, from, the athletic end of it. And when he came in, basically said, look, I need all available resources. You need to be able to give me the green light on what I asked for, because if you do that, I can get you where you want to be. And clearly he's taken Georgia within a split hair of where they want to be. And certainly they look like they're on track again in 2021.
Well, you touched on something I wanted to ask you about, the Nick Sabin influence. And what I love about Kirby is that he's not afraid to admit that he learned a lot from his mentors. And obviously the biggest mentor is Nick Sabin. And you're right. Nick is the king of modern recruiting. I mean, you can make an argument that Coach Saban is the king of recruiting, period. I mean, because all of it kind of revolves around what happens at Alabama and how Nick Sabin goes after kids. But that's changing a little bit, largely because of some of the lessons that Kirby Smart learned from Nick Sabin.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I applaud Kirby for that, because there are a lot of guys who would say, I did it my own way. I shaped it my own way. I mean, I don't think he's made any bones about it. And I think rightfully so. Everyone is trying to get to where Alabama is from a success standpoint, from a recruiting standpoint, from a fan base standpoint. I mean, you want that national reach. And I think that it's a great thing that he owns that. I think that if you're not trying to be where Alabama is, what are you playing the game for?
So we get a lot of different approaches from a head coaching standpoint. You get some head coaches that will be very hands off and let their recruit assistants handle everything, let their support staff handle everything. Then they come in and try to seal the deal. But from talking to so many of these recruits ever since he's arrived there, Kirby Smart's heavily invested in the recruiting process from the beginning with a lot of these guys.
Yeah, and I think that makes a world of difference for a lot of them, because, like you said, you have those support staffers and you have the assistant coaches who are normally in charge of that. kids really respond to this idea that, this guy has everything in the world going on. He's got a million things he could be focused on. And instead, he's taking his time to focus on me. And I think that that's something that really rings true. You hear that with a lot of kids. I know people think of Kirby even as a great defensive guru, which he certainly is, but offensive kids respond to it just as well. And, they say, he understands that you got to have the best offense to be cutting the teeth for the defense. These guys are wanting to get to the league, and they know that, Kirby's building a defense that's dominant, but it also benefits them when they're having to go up against it in practice every day.
Yeah.
Those are things that he's kind of reasserting every week when he's talking to kids. And like you said, that involvement, I think, is so huge. You see Kirby out on the trail all the time. He's always busting out the Kirby copter and flying around. And we caught him over at North Gwinnett, Collins Hill. Just making an appearance, even though Travis Hunter's injured. Right. Yeah. There were and there were other players in that game, but it was pretty clear who he was there to see and who he was there to support. Travis Hunter not even playing in that game. But you get Will Muschamp and Kirby Smart. Kirby Smart, obviously, with the Ric Flair type entrance. But I think, that kind of stuff is really playing well with kids. And it's just another advantage that programs who do it have, because kids are looking for that involvement from their head coach. They understand that's the CEO, and that guy better be involved as well, because I'm going to have to work for that guy.
Yeah, it's the old buck stops with me type mentality. If you want to run a successful company, it starts with your work ethic, and you've got to set the example for everybody else. But you're right. It does send a tremendous message to players and to their families also when hey, Kirby Smart's FaceTiming me here, or he's text messaging with me, or, oh my God, he's flying in to come see those things. I mean, I guarantee those kids at that high school are going to be talking about the Kirby copter coming in for, they'll talk about that 20 years from now, just that type of impact. And it's not done by a lot of head coaches. A lot of head coaches do delegate the recruiting process, and that's probably a big reason why he's so successful.
Yeah, I absolutely think it is. I think that it's been key, because even in situations, necessarily where you've had assistants move on, Mel Tucker, Shane Beamer, these guys kind of take other jobs. Kirby's been right there to reassure these kids and say, look, that guy's gone, but the vision of the program hasn't changed. It's still the same under me. I'm going to get you a guy in here who's going to be able to develop you the same. But you have to understand, this is my program. We're going to run it my way. And if you want to be a part of that, hey, I'm here for you, and I'm going to be here.
Well, it's also kind of fun to see Mel Tucker take that model and apply it to Michigan State. And we'll see how long he's there at Michigan State. Obviously, there's a lot of speculation that he's a hot candidate for other jobs here. But you're right. The train keeps on moving. That's the most beautiful thing about what Nick Sabin has done over the years, is that no matter who the offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator, position coaches are, that recruiting success continues. And we're seeing that a lot at UJ also. So I'm curious. I mean, you talk to these recruits a lot, and we talked about him putting in the work ethic, but you got to have a personality that resonates with recruits and their families. You're talking to these kids. What is it about his personality that recruits and their families like?
The big thing that I hear about Kirby that I think benefits him a lot is that most people say he's just a normal, down-to-earth guy. There's not really any aloofness to him, despite, the prestige of his position or the salary that he makes. I mean, he's a guy who's able to go in and connect with people just on a really genuine basis. On that night that I saw him come in to see Travis Hunter bring in the helicopter, the first thing he did when he got inside that stadium was stop and just take pictures with people. Yeah. Everybody who wanted a shot with Kirby got one, had a chance to catch up with fans, laughing with people. It's a real it's a very humble attitude, I would say, I think. And I think it kind of creates that, man of the people feel when he's talking to kids. I wish he were as nice to media, but that's for another day.
And that's important in Georgia. I mean, that's you live there, the people, that man of the people, one of us type feel is probably more important in Georgia than in other parts of the country.
Yeah, I think so, for sure. I mean, a lot of these kids are coming from small towns. A lot of these kids are coming from, small programs. they're playing with kids that they played with their whole life. So that family feel is really important. And I think Kirby's able to impart that through his personality and through his pitches.
So we've talked a lot about how Kirby is involved in the process, but what I think really is impressive to me is, and it works for Georgia, is that he is smart enough to strike a balance between being involved, but also letting his star recruiters recruit, and that balance is something that we often don't see throughout college football.
Yeah, no question about it. I think that he understands the strengths of his guys and he wants them to develop. Kirby's not a guy that I think begrudges anybody for moving on. I think that he wants to see his guys climb the ladder and have the success that they've had. Because look, quite frankly, you're going to attract better coaches that way. It's just like recruiting, right? I mean, if you develop the guys and allow them to do what they can do, they can go out and do that. And I think that he's done a great job, bringing on a guy like Dan Lanning, who reminded a lot of people of a young Kirby Smart, and having him here through this tenure. His is a name that's being brought up for a lot of head coaching jobs as well now. I think that he kind of took that mentorship role very seriously, and it's been beneficial for Georgia to have some of that continuity on staff with some of those great recruiters, just like you've seen at a place like Clemson, where they've been able to keep assistants around for a very long time.
So you mentioned one name there. Who are some of the other guys that, if you're a true recruit, Nick, these are the guys that are doing the damage for Georgia on the trail?
Well, Dan Lanning, jumps off the page, certainly. I mean, his defense is what's leading this team right now. And I think that it's a pretty easy sell when you're able to go in and pick what he's got going. But he's been really effective and been a huge part of building that, bringing in some of these guys, Adam Anderson, Nolan Smith. Those were guys that he was heavily involved in. And you've seen how that's paid off for them moving forward. Offensively, look, you got to give it to Del McGee. I think that he's a guy who's just done a fantastic job since coming onto this staff, being a part of Kirby's staff initially, and then continuing the success. Because if you're at Georgia, you better have strong running backs. That's what they're known for, and he's kept them stocked up in the cupboards for sure. And then one guy I think who's really emerging is Jamal Adai. I think he's done a great job coming in, picking up where Charlton Warren left off. He did a fantastic job as well, but the onus is on defensive backs this year. Georgia needs them. They're losing some experience on that back end. They need to refresh back there. They're not as deep as they want to be, and he's done a fantastic job of putting a great class together and has some of the top level guys who are uncommitted very, very interested in Georgia as well. So I think Jamal is taking a big step forward under Kirby Smart.
Yeah, I like that. Good call. A good call. I think that you hit on the need at defensive back, especially in the SEC. Especially if you want to stop a team like Alabama and all the stars that they have at that on the offensive side of the ball, especially at receiver. So we've talked about the Smart. We've talked about the assistants, and the proof's in the pudding. I mean, they have been on a run unlike anything. I mean, and I'm serious, guys. People listening to me probably think I'm talking hyperbole, but this has been unlike any kind of recruiting run that I've seen in 25 plus years that they've been doing. And the run that they've gone on in October has just been tremendous. And the train has started to go down the track. They started with 4-star tight end Oscar Delp, and then they ended it with coveted defensive lineman Bear Alexander. So walk us through what type of month it has been for UGA in October, because it's just been incredible, something that they could write a book about.
Well, it's been tough for the UGA writers to keep up. I'll tell you that. It's been a good month for Georgia if that's the case. Like you said, Oscar Delp, I felt like that was a huge pickup for Georgia. And if there was a must get in the class, I don't know that you necessarily feel like tight end was it, but I will say because of the importance that they placed on Oscar Delp and how lightly they recruited other guys, I think that it made it feel much more like a must get. He was an in-state guy, fits in really well with what they do. Feels like a great bridge over from Brock Bowers if they're able to continue that run as well. So huge pickup. And a lot of credit to Todd Hartley there. He's done a fantastic job. I'm talking about a guy who's been on a run: Brock Bowers, Darnell Washington, Brett Seither, Riley Godey. Yeah, the list goes on and on. The Georgia tight end room is deep, and he's been a big reason why. You follow that up with Aluba. Out of IMG Academy, a guy who I think is probably got his best football ahead of him personally. A big bodied guy playing down there at IMG. And I love the idea that he went there basically wanting to play against better competition and really refine his game. Offensive line, not an easy sell for Georgia right now because they are pretty deep on the offensive line and have recruited the position well. But look, you got to keep those trenches big. And Kirby said that in his initial press conference. He said, we have got to change the trenches here at Georgia on both sides of the ball. They've done an effective job of that on both sides for sure. But like I said, this was not an easy sell. I think the dominance of Georgia this year really helped to push Ba toward them, and credit Matt Luke there as well. Wednesday comes around, you get Mikhail Williams, the straight up flip. And, I was talking to Chad Simmons the other day. You just don't see a lot of the straight up flips anymore. It feels like the guys decommit and then they release another top schools list and, kind of do the whole process again. Straight up flipped Mikhail Williams from USC. Not a huge surprise. And if there was a front runner, even when he was committed to USC, felt like Georgia was the front runner in that one. It felt like a win, not if. And, then the staff gets let go at USC, or at least Clay Helton does. And that shakes everything up. And Georgia waiting in the wings. And I give them a lot of credit for this, too. They've done a good job under Kirby Smart of not burning any bridges.
Okay.
I think that there's not been any hurt feelings. If a guy decides he wants to go somewhere else, they kind of come in with that Motel 6 and say, hey, we'll leave the light on for you. I mean, it's there's that's paid off in several situations for them. I think Demetrius Robertson was kind of the first one that comes to mind as a guy that, they recruited him so hard, and then he ends up going to Cal, and they say, hey, good luck to you. We're here if you need us. And now that the transfer portal's here, if you need to give us a call, give us a call. So it paid off again with Mikhail Williams. And then also, too, you followed that up with Barry Alexander, a guy who decommitted from them and was seemingly leading Texas A&M for a long time. And then, they keep the pressure on. There's no let up. They're very encouraged about their chances. They stay after it, and it pays off in a huge way. That's the kind of guy that you have to get to restock your trenches when you're losing a guy like Jordan Davis. This is the kind of bridge you need to build. And so I credit them a lot for those approaches. I think that that's really been beneficial to Georgia. October was insane. I think the lead up to signing day is just going to be as nuts, and I'm trying to get some sleep at some point.
Well, not only Ba was committed to Florida State. Don't forget that was a huge get, and Mikhail is huge from an in-state standpoint. And then Bear was one of those guys. We don't see this happen really ever in recruiting, where a guy commits to one school, decommits, leans to another school, and then I'm back to the original school. That almost never happens.
Yeah, it caught. I mean, I'll be quite honest with you. It caught me completely off guard. I was doing a podcast actually the day before it happened, and I was like, I'm still going with Texas A&M for this kid. We hadn't heard anything different, but I think it felt like a situation where he woke up and really just decided on that day, hey, I'm ready to do this, and I'm ready to get back with these guys. I think that it speaks a lot to the comfort level that the staff had established both with him and his family. The need obviously is pronounced. And then also too, the development of a guy like Jordan Davis, who was not the most highly sought after guy, not the most, highly ranked guy, but they've been able to take him and make him into a first round NFL draft pick. And that's really playing well with kids.
So Georgia now has the number 2 class in the On3 consensus ranking after that wild October. So help us paint a picture of what's still on the table for Georgia. They have 21 commits. They're behind Alabama. How many more spots are open in this class?
That's really, I think, going to come down to what happens from an NCAA perspective, and if they're granted additional spots from some of the backdating and some of the transfers and COVID and all that. So, I think that they're hoping that they can push this thing past 25. I think that that's the goal for them. I mean, we did a hot board on it last Friday, and there were 16 names on it. So, I mean, you're looking at they've still got irons in the fire all over the place, despite having 21 kids committed. And so in a normal year, I'd be maybe kicking my feet up and saying, oh, we got an easy run up to signing day. But if they're going to be able to get these extra spots,
Yeah.
they're going to take advantage of that every single time. No question in my mind about it. So I think that that's got to be key for them. If you're looking for some key names, Jaheim Singletary, I think definitely a guy they feel good about. Kamari Wilson, another guy out of IMG Academy who they really liked and really been heavily in on for some time. Julian Humphrey, former Florida commit, feels like they got a great shot there. Shamar James, Shamar Stewart. The list goes on and on, man. It's insane. Like I said, I should be able to relax a little bit more than I would with 21 commits, but Kirby doesn't make it easy on anybody.
And I think you're going to probably be busy in January too, because we've seen in the new world of recruiting where the December early signing period is essentially the new signing day, unlike what we had in February. But with some of these guys, you mentioned 16 plus still on the Georgia hot board. Not all these guys are going to commit here before December 15th rolls around. So I'm sorry, dude, you're gonna be busy all the way February.
Well, and then too, I mean, it's just been the case every single year. It feels like since they've implemented the early signing period that there's going to be names that emerge after the season. There's going to be new senior tape that gets into hands. There's going to be, a chance to get guys in for official visits and evaluation and a chance to see them in person. And I think that, the list can only grow. And that's both scary and encouraging.
All right, I'm going to ask you to get your crystal ball out here, okay? Shine it up and look deeply into it. Do you think UGA has enough mojo to pass Alabama for the nation's #1 class by, let's not say December 15th, let's say the first Wednesday in February? Do you think they end up with the #1 class in the country?
I think they got a real shot to do that. I think probably it comes down to what happens in the SEC championship and then the playoffs. Because if they can, push that, get over that hump, maybe if it is Alabama in the SEC championship or whoever it is, kids want to know that Georgia is not just a regular season thing. They want to know that they can win big ones too. So, I think that they've got a real shot to do that. I think it will come down to postseason play personally.
Yeah, no, and there's still, even though we're in early November, there's still a lot of storylines to be written on the field that will impact the recruiting trail. That's what we break down every single Monday, the winners and losers of college football on the field and how it impacts recruiting every Monday on On3. And there's still a lot of movement to be had here. So it's going to be fun to see what happens. And it's obvious Georgia's going to be a big part of this, Jake. And I think we could talk about this all day, but I just knew we had to get you on to talk about the hottest team on the recruiting trail. And nobody knows the ins and outs better than you do. So, all right, tell our listeners how they can find your work and even sign up for more unrivaled coverage of the Dogs.
Yeah, get over to Dogs HQ and check us out. We've got some great pieces up. We're covering recruiting from all angles, of course, but we've got all your team coverage handled. Basketball season's ready to be here. We'll have that covered for you too. We've got John Richt breaking down film for us, doing a fantastic job with that. So get over to Dogs HQ, check us out. We're building the community up, and we've been very excited about where we've taken it so far. It's only going to get better, and we're looking forward to that as well. And then if you're looking to follow me on social media, you can do so over on Twitter at Reuse Recruiting. It's REUSE Recruiting. And I guess I'm old because I don't do like TikTok and Instagram, but I get over and check me out on Twitter, and that's all I can give you for social media.
Yeah, no, us olds will stick to Twitter. I mean, and you're right. That's one of the neat things about the new On3 recruiting database. You will be able to find prospects' social media handles right out of the gate. And yes, we even do TikTok over there. So it's certainly it's a really cool thing. And you guys are doing a tremendous job. And I can't thank you enough for you coming on to join us on this week's podcast. And you definitely have a long few weeks and months ahead of you, man.
Well, hey, I'm looking forward to it, Jeremy. With guys like you on the team and Chad, it makes it easy and fun for me. So I'm enjoying it, and hope people will tune into Dogs HQ and check it all out.
Definitely head over to Dogs HQ on the On3 network. All right, folks, that's it for this week's edition of Over the Middle. Once again, I'm your host, Jeremy Crabtree with On3, and we cannot do this show without the support from the great folks at YourView. YourView is your home for the top high school football matchups from Arizona to Rhode Island and everywhere in between. Head over to watch.yourview.com and check out some of the great matchups slated for this week. High school football playoffs are all over the country. And don't forget, we've got good matchups in Louisiana, Arizona, Kansas, and Oklahoma. I know I'll be logging in to watch them, and you should be too. Before we go, show some love for your favorite recruiting podcast by leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and on SoundCloud. And also, be sure to hit that subscribe or follow button. All right. Thanks again for joining us on Over the Middle. We've got a bye game next week. Yep, we're off next week. We'll be back in 2 weeks, and then we will be less than a month away from the start of the early signing period. So I know we'll have plenty to break down. We'll talk to you in a couple of weeks here on Over the Middle.